Hello, this is Unsun with GameLeap, and in today's video, we're going to be giving you the best 8 top laners to learn. Now, top lane is a role that is primarily based around counter picks, so I would recommend that you choose 2 to 3 of these champions that complement each other. The things that beat Jax won't beat Gwen, and so on and so forth. With this in mind, we're also not going to be covering champions that are too simple, such as Malphite, because he's very easy to execute, as well as not covering things like Irelia, which are far too difficult to learn in a meaningful amount of time. Instead, we're finding the perfect middle ground on this list of champions that are easy to get into, while also being effective. So champions like Irelia will not be included, even though they're overpowered when played at their absolute peak. Let's go ahead and get right into this list, starting off with our first pick. Gwen has to be our first pick for a few reasons. This champion has good scaling, she's really strong in a side lane, she does well into both bruisers and tanks, and can hold her own against carries. Gwen has been solid for a long time. Since her introduction to the game, she has always been at least somewhat of a threat, and this champion has a very beneficial playstyle to just about any team. If you need to dive the backline, Gwen can do it. If you need to split push in a side lane, Gwen can definitely do that. If you need to shut down something like Asante, Malphite, or Ornn, then Gwen can also do that. She can easily run away with the game once given enough time, as Gwen scales incredibly well with both gold and game length. This champ is both easy to get into and hard to master as well, thanks to how complex her W usage can be. We can zone an entire backline with just the W if we learn how to play this properly, and that's why Gwen has to be pick number 1. Now, our second champion on this list is going to be Aatrox. Aatrox has forever been a solid blind pick since his rework. This champion has gone through a couple of different periods of power. This champion has been borderline useless before, but also incredibly overpowered. But even when Aatrox is at his worst, he still offers some of the best things that you could provide in League of Legends, and that is AoE CC. When Aatrox is incapable of being a drain tank, this champion pumps crowd control and knockups like no other. Aatrox has cemented himself into being a mainstay of top lane, and for that reason, I believe that you should pick him up. This champion has good matchups into tanks, good matchups into bruisers, struggles against carries such as Jax and Riven, but these matchups can easily be overcome with just a little bit of sauce. For this reason, I recommend that everybody picks up Aatrox. This is always going to be a super strong counter pick. If something like Darius or Volibear is ever in meta, Aatrox can single-handedly shut them down while also offering safe and strong scaling. This champion has been good, has always been good, and will remain strong even if his numbers are greatly reduced. Just a reminder, if you ever want to learn any of the champions presented to you on this list, head on over to GameLeap.com by clicking on the description box below to see our plethora of champion courses. I've spent hundreds of hours making these courses for players such as yourself to go and use, so make sure that you head on over to the site. Next up on our list is Jax. Jax is strong as a generalist. This champion can basically do everything. He can split push, he can team fight, he can skirmish, he can duel, you get it. Jax does it all. This is truly a jack of all trades champion. If you want to play a carry Jax, you can definitely do that by going Trinity Force Blade of the Ruined King. If you want to beat tanks with Jax, you could do that by going Divine Sunder. If you want to play him as a skirmisher that's ability focused, then you can play Divine Sunder into Spear of Shojin. You get the idea. This champion has very diverse builds. He can abuse Hullbreaker, and even his worst matchups aren't unwinnable, simply due to how strong he is with items. If you leave Jax alone in the side lane, this champion will take over, and for that reason, he is very high up on our list. This champion has always been a fantastic answer for basically every single top lane scenario for good reason. He's just overall solid. Speaking of solid, our next pick on this list is going to be Ornn. Ornn as a champion carries games in a different way. Whereas Jax might get a lot of kills and be able to split push on the map, Ornn carries team fights and also through the general amount of gold that he grants. Every Ornn upgraded item is basically 1,000 extra gold to your team, which is already strong by itself, but when paired with his fantastic ultimate, you are sure to make an impact. This champion can be blind picked in just about every scenario and be strong. If you want to poke somebody out, then you can max Q. If you are focused on mostly trading against other tanks or all-inning, then you can max W, which both give you different damage profiles. Q-Max Ornn is the ultimate stalemate champion, whereas W-Max Ornn is fantastic for eating burst trades on just about every single tanky opponent. This champ is easy to learn, easy to pick up, and has plenty of combo potential for those of you that want to take it a step further. Number 5 on our list is going to be Garen. Garen is strong for different reasons. This is a champion that doesn't really have a super good early game, but his mid and late are disgustingly strong, especially with the new Hullbreaker build. This champion can build mostly HP items and get away with it simply due to how strong his E is and how strong the ult to execute is, while being uncatchable thanks to Hullbreaker, Phase Rush, and Deadman's Plate. Garen as a champion is a strong counterpick into things like Jax once we understand the matchup. He's decent into champions like Renekton because you can stalemate them, and this allows you to then take over the mid game where Garen is at his strongest. There is essentially no counterplay to this champion as an AD carry, and it's very clear as to why. He simply hits his ghost, runs straight at you, uses Stridebreaker active, spins on you, and then kills you from 60% HP thanks to how strong his ultimate is, and then sprints away with about 1/5 of his health left. This champion is super degenerate in what he can do for the amount of effort that you put into him. Garen is incredibly simple to learn while being extremely effective in the right hands. If you want to play him as a split pusher with Demolish, you definitely can. If you want to play him as a Conqueror Assassin, assassin, then you can, or if you want to play him as a phase rush hit and run machine, you can also do that. For his strengths in certain matchups and for his diverse builds, Garen is definitely one of the better picks on this list. Gangplank is number 6. This is where things are going to get a little bit harder. GP is of course one of, if not the highest skill cap top laner in the entire game, but accessing this skill cap is not required for having a mean GP. If you ever want to play a lane bully into a tanky champion, or if you want to simply scale and then one-shot an entire team, there is no better option than Gangplank. Gangplank excels at blowing people up in mid to late game teamfights with his massive barrel combos as well as his global ultimate. Even though GP does have a weaker early game, you can simply run Ignite on this champion and cheese most champions in the game level 1 to 2, depending on what your matchup is, and this leads him in kind of a weird spot. GP is really strong at level 3, he's weak again until he completes his first item, and then if he gets a lucky crit on you, he's incredibly strong, and that strength only goes up as he completes more items. This champ has always been one of the best top laners in the game when used effectively, and with GP being shifted back to being a carry, this is going to remain this way. I highly recommend that you watch some GP players such as Solar Baka just to see how much you can get out of this champion. Much like other generalist champions, GP can excel both as a skirmisher and a split pusher, but his home is definitely in the teamfight. A messy teamfight where you're allowed to get 1 to 2 barrel combos off is generally going to be decided by whether or not it crits. If it does crit, it is not uncommon for GP to kill an AD carry with just a barrel into ulti one-shot. This champion is absolutely hilarious when you have him mastered, but it's going to take 10 to 20 games for you to actually get a handle on him. Next up on our list is going to be Camille. Camille has historically been one of the most problematic top laners ever introduced into the game. Everybody knows of Camille having a mini Cho'Gath ultimate every single time that her Q comes up, and it's for good reason. This champion stalemates a lot of carries. She does super well into bruisers that build percent health and absolutely eviscerates any and all tank champion. Camille is one of the strongest champs in the game once we learn her playstyle, but her playstyle is very unique, which is why we have her lower down on this list. Once we get about 10 games of Camille under our belt, we can go from useless and being bullied to being the bully. This champion has some of the most oppressive trades in the game. Thanks to her synergy with her passive and shield bash, this allows her to get a huge amount of damage on you in the early stages of the game, and then bone plating is also there to allow us to take extended trades without having to worry about getting blown up before our Q2 comes up. Camille is one of the strongest conduits for bruiser items in the game. You can essentially build any overpowered bruiser item on her at any point in time, and it will be effective, simply due to how her true damage scales and how the rest of her kit functions, which leaves her in an awesome spot of being a super effective carry while also being disgustingly tanky. And finally, last but not least on our list is going to be Fiora. Fiora as a champion rewards more Twitch reactions. Fiora is similar to Irelia at the high end of how she plays. You can definitely play this champion in a way that is going to be super reliant on having better mechanics than your opponent, but you don't need to, which is why Fiora makes the cut and Irelia doesn't. Any person on the planet can pick up Grass Fiora very easily because her lane phase is so oppressive. This makes her very strong in just about every scenario. She beats carries if we have decent reactions, she does incredibly well into basically every single bruiser matchup, and she always outscales tanks to become a side lane menace. So while Fiora is on the more difficult end of top lane champions, she is 100% not unlearnable. This is a champion that's very accessible for those of you that want to get into carries. The reason that we have her so late on the list is not only because she has such high reaction requirements, but also because her playstyle is unconventional. Fiora is primarily a split pusher and a skirmisher. She does really well in 2v2s, but anything above that is kind of a struggle. We have to have a perfect riposte, but in a 1v1 or a 2v2, it doesn't matter nearly as much. We can simply blow up one person, focus on blowing them up, and then go back to our side lane to wait for the next duel. This champion is really strong once we understand the playstyle, but because it's so unconventional compared to the majority of other top laners here, we have her lower rated on the list. Fiora primarily wants to sit in a side lane and duke it out with towers, looking for 1v1s and tower dives as she can, instead of grouping around objectives such as Baron and Drake. For these reasons, Fiora requires a different skill set. Make sure that you check out the website if you want to learn more about her. Anyways, this was Unsung with GameLeap. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. I'll see you in the next one.